The following portion of the Arizona Daily Mix is sponsored on behalf of ACE Resource Network by Gorvitz Communications.
How can we help kids be healthy and thrive even in seriously stressed times? Well, I talked with former California Surgeon General and author Dr. Nadine Burke Harris on how we can help kids deal with the stress in their life. Good morning, Dr. Burke Harris. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. I'm so glad we're talking to you about this topic because it is something that's very important in our kids' life, and that is understanding how stress impacts the kids and how to deal with it. So what are some things we need to understand when it comes to our kids and stress?
Well, I think that for a lot of us, we recognize that stress can affect our kids' mental health, and it's true. Now, globally, we saw kids' depression and anxiety double during the pandemic. But the thing that fewer of us recognize is that stress can affect kids' health, right? So when we experience stress, it releases stress hormones. And for kids, those stress hormones can affect the way kids' brains develop, the way their hormones develop, the way their immune system functions. And it can lead to something called the toxic stress response. And with that, we see increased risk of things like asthma, diabetes, increased risk of depression, learning disorders. And over the long term, without intervention, it can increase risk for things like heart disease or even cancer.
Yeah, wow. It's so amazing how that is playing a big part right now. So how can we help protect, of course, kids from the toxic stress that they're seeing?
Well, what the research shows is that safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments are healing for kids, right? They actually help to shut off the stress response, which is really important. But when we think about the fact that most of us as adults have experienced our own adverse childhood experiences, then when we are trying to be there for our kids, it's actually really important that we have addressed our own adversity, right? So whether that is through mental health, which we know makes an important difference, regular exercise, things like mindfulness, spending time in nature, all of these things are really important for our kids to help them regulate their stress response, but they're equally important for us so that we can be, on the even keel so we can be there for our kids.
Yeah, you said something very important, that is as parents setting the example, and you mentioned about getting out and to the wilderness and to find areas to help us with our stress are so important there. What else would you like people to know that could help us with dealing with our kids and the stress together?
One of the most important things I think for people to understand is that when we're addressing this issue, an every family for themselves approach is not enough. In Arizona alone, the cost of adverse childhood experiences in healthcare costs and lost productivity is $292 billion per year, according to a new study that was just released by the CDC. So what that is telling us is that, yes, we have to be doing these things in our household, but we also have to make sure that we're doing the early detection, early intervention, and making sure that families have access to the services like mental health, like safe places for kids to play. All of these things are really important that we respond on a society-wide level so that we can break these intergenerational cycles.
Yeah, it's about listening, paying attention, and realizing that the kids' stress today is not like the stress that we had when we were growing up. It's a lot different, and that's why we need to listen and of course, do the things that are going to benefit our kids and ourselves as parents. It's so important. So, Dr. Burke Harris, where can we find more information?
Well, I wrote a book about it, The Deepest Well, Healing the Long-Term Effects of Childhood Adversity. Folks can also go to numberstory.org. And if you're concerned about your child's health, talk to your child's doctor.
I love it. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No.
The preceding portion of the Arizona Daily Mix was sponsored on behalf of ACE Resource Network by Gorvitz Communications.